Alrighty.
Let's tell me your story. What's happened to you?
Well, what hasn't happened to me?
Yeah.
Things have happened since the day I set my foot on this land 12 years ago, and it hasn't stopped. And
you have a nice place here up on the Brownsburg Road.
Thank you.
Very attractive.
Yeah, I finally closed on the loan and finally able to call it mine without renting, which is wonderful.
Good. So what's happened to you with the government around here?
Well, I've been given a really raw deal.
Yeah.
I was provided legal counsel for 2 things that I got charged with, which both were ludicrous.
Right.
The first one being I was charged with providing a false emergency, whereas I had told them that one of my vehicles was stolen in the process of moving here.
And you sincerely thought it had been stolen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
But then they charged you for filing a false report.
More money for the county, I guess.
Yeah.
I was told that the county doesn't get any of it, that most of it goes to the jail system, but either way you look at it, it's more money for somebody's pocket.
Right.
And with me having a handicapped daughter that is blind, autistic, and has Down syndrome and severely handicapped, you know, it makes it very hard for me.
And you've been our caretaker for a real long time, haven't you?
28 years, mostly alone, yes.
So, they came and took away your animals, right?
Yeah, that's another thing which made it even harder for me with my handicapped child. She hasn't actually slept since the day they took them away.
They were her personal pets, right?
Yes, they were her personal pets, and specifically I was told to get her something to compensate for the blindness.
Right.
And her workers had suggested getting her a pet, so I adopted 2 dogs, one which had been abused by a local girl that did drugs all the time and wasn't feeding her, and the other one was in really purely humane conditions in a small cage, and he was in his feces with about 10 other pups. His feet were raw, and I bathed them and got all the shots, neutered him with my own money. Both the dogs, actually. Didn't get a voucher. And brought them home and had them, both of those, for 5 years. I had also a parrot, an exotic bird that I paid $1,200 for. She will be 16 years at the end of this month. They took her too. And 23 chickens and 2 roosters.
And they took the, how long ago has that been since they took them?
It was on July the 2nd, and the order was...
That was of this summer?
Yes, this summer. It was July the 2nd, and they came that evening without a warrant. There was no warrant. There was no seizure paper of any kind. There was nothing that stated that they were going to take my animals, what animals they were taking. They had been up here just about a month before that and were looking around my place and nosing into what I had. And at that point I did have 2 horses out here, because I had a total of 4 horses. I had 2 horses out here, and I decided to sell them because I didn't have enough acreage at this new place, and I would have to feed them hay all summer. But instead of letting them out there in the field and foraging on a little bit of grass they had, I decided to give them a good home, and I sold them to 2 nice people in Huntersville.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, basically...
well, let's come here. Where did... who came and got your animals?
It was the Pocahontas Sheriff's Department, as well as the 2 Humane Society officers.
Were there deputies with them?
There was 2 day report people. No,
and that would have been Josh Vaughn?
Yes.
And Robin Creel?
I think that's what her last name is.
Okay.
And I believe, I think Robert was also there from day report, because I'm on day report for this too.
Yeah.
For 6 months. And, you know, I have no problem biding my time if I were guilty.
Right.
But I'm not guilty of anything. And I was never given the opportunity in court to provide an alternate explanation for my innocence. I felt like I was railroaded because I had a lawyer who obviously was very new out of law school. She was very young, Susan Brees.
Yes.
public defender, and she was not prepared whatsoever at all. I was humiliated in the courtroom over and over again by the prosecutor. And
Now, who was doing the prosecution?
it was Bob Martin.
Bob Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And Susan Brees had been appointed?
Yes. Originally, I had paid another lawyer $1,500, which Bob Martin had argued I probably didn't pay him. That's why he dropped my case.
Yeah.
But conveniently, they dropped my case. Well, I had dropped my case before December, and conveniently in the next year, of course, in June, I get a subpoena saying I'm being recharged for it again. I was given 6 months' time to pay the veterinarian fees associated with the horse in question that I had gotten from a local man. And I didn't have that 6 months. I didn't have that 6 months. The lawyer that I had originally paid for never found out the information as to who I was supposed to pay.
So had they originally charged you with animal cruelty?
Yes, they charged me with 2 counts. One, not feeding and watering, and the second one, not providing medical attention.
And about when was that?
That would have been March of the previous year, 2012.
So that would have been essentially in the winter.
Yes.
Do you have any idea why they came? What probable cause did they have for that?
They said somebody called and they said that the horse seemed a little bit underweight, which I had just wormed her for the second time. The first time I wormed her, she spit out all the medicine. So I waited a good solid month, and then I mixed it in her grain because I wanted to make sure. She just seemed, you know, both of them seemed like they could possibly have worms, because my daughter and I did a lot of, you know, checking different things, clues for things on the internet, because we're not, you know, experts in horses by any means, but I do know common knowledge of how to take care of one. Make sure they have fresh, clean water at all times. They also had a heating unit which de-iced the 200-gallon freshwater tanks. I had 150-pound bags of grain and 36 bales of hay.
And that was when they came the second time and took them, right?
I still had all of that amount at that time, because every 2 weeks I would go get more hay to make sure that I always had. When they first came to tell me the option that I had to get medical attention for the horse, I was given 10 days to get medical attention for the horse. At that point, I had 36 bales.
Right.
I had added another 15 bales just the previous week after that, because I, you know, was buying it every 2 weeks. So the hay was there. I was told that I couldn't really be charged with not feeding and watering, because he saw that I had all the hay and saw the horse eat.
So what did they charge you with?
Failure to provide food and water.
Well, wait a minute. You had food and water there.
I had plenty of it. And
so had they at any time observed you feeding or not feeding the animals?
Just at that moment when they came there and they wanted to see the horse in question eat. Originally, the horse was purchased for my handicapped daughter as therapy.
Right.
And I wanted to do horseback riding therapy with her, and then I had purchased a second horse for my older daughter. Well, actually she would be the youngest daughter, but I still think of my handicapped child as a young little girl, because she has the mind of a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And when the man dropped them off in the field, he had switched for a gelding that I had originally put the money down on. I got the first horse that I wanted, but the second horse was switched. And he proceeded to tell me that the horse had a chewing problem, which is called cribbing. And she chewed on everything, and he told me the horse was depressed, and thought that it would be a good match for my handicapped daughter, because they were both considered special needs horses.
Mm-hmm.
And then right before he left, he told me that the horse in question had a hard time keeping on weights. And it was taken from 2 previous individuals. Now, I'm not sure if he sold the animal to 2 previous individuals and he confiscated them back himself, or whether or not the Humane Society was involved with that. I can't find anybody to give me information. The horse's hooves were severely overgrown. I had to get somebody out. They look like shovels in the end, literally. Yeah. And if you watch any of the shows on the Animal Planet, you know, some of those horses with their hooves overgrown like that can create problems like fondering, where they can't walk right and such. And the very next day I had somebody come out and trim the horse's hooves, and I also had another couple come out because she just didn't seem like she was walking right even after she was trimmed, the horse in question. And the two people that I had come out are very knowledgeable in horses. They've been around them all their lives. They all have their own horses. And they told me that I was taken, really, really taken, for lame horses. So I proceeded to call the individual up and more or less was told that I'm crazy, there's nothing wrong with the horse, and he didn't want them back because he didn't want to have to feed them in the wintertime. And now I kind of come to realize why he didn't want to have to feed him. He was running into financial problems himself, but I didn't know it at that time. Couldn't ever ride any of them. Ever. You know, they'd throw you off of it. I was promised many things, to have their hooves trimmed before they were delivered. You know, the switch in the horse. You know, the medical conditions and everything. I just had it all put on me when the Humane Society came out. I was never given the opportunity to explain my side because my lawyer was unprepared, like I said, and my witnesses weren't allowed.